Okay, cool. I'm going to hand it over to you guys. I'll just say that I love your podcast, Pelicanus.org. Everyone should check it out. I have it on my phone. I've subscribed to the podcast and I listen to it when I'm feeling down about things. It's fantastic. Austin and Taylor, thanks so much for joining us. I won't read a bio or anything for you guys. I think it'll be more interesting for you guys just to introduce yourselves and how you got into all this and share with us your thoughts. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys now.
Well, great. Thank you. Of course, right on time. I'm getting your internet is unstable sign, so right on cue. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I will apologize. We do have a puppy, so you might see me throwing the toy around and see her enter the screen. She's a little bit rambunctious, but yeah. Let's see. All right. How do I, there we go. Is that coming through all right? Okay. All right, well, yeah. So my name is Austin Parker. I am a wildlife ecologist in Los Angeles, California. Right now I work for a small nonprofit where I manage some wildlife restoration projects and monitoring, and yeah, it's been pretty fun. And I actually finished I'm an alumnus of the AIP program. I went through San Diego Zoo, Wildlife Alliance now, San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. I always joke when people ask, like, where'd you get your master's? Like, well, there's 5 names for it. So which one do you want? But yeah, so I'll let Taylor, if you're ready, I'll let you introduce yourself from Belize.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Taylor, and as you can see, we share a last name, so we are brothers. And I'm a conservation social scientist. I started my career in Southern California, restoring wetlands, coastal wetlands. And then I got my PhD recently from Clemson University in South Carolina, working on payment for ecosystem services in some forests in South Carolina. And I'm currently in Belize working on some agroforestry projects and some community work. And I really hope that the connection stays stable this entire time. So happy to be here. Thank you, Kevin, for putting this together, and to everybody on the call.
Well, keep praying to the technology gods. And then this photo that you can see here is actually from a release that we did a couple of years ago of, they think it might be the most endangered butterfly in the world. It's called the Pallas Fertis boot butterfly. So it's actually, this photo was taken by my coworker, Megan, who is actually in the AIP program right now. I'm not sure if she's on here, but thanks for the photo, Megan. There we go. So just to kind of give everybody a background of who we are, what we do. We started Pelecanus, I don't know, 2015, it's probably 6 years ago now. And just last year, we were able to incorporate and make a nonprofit out of it. But our whole purpose is to do what we call reframe the narrative around conservation. Basically it started because I was starting to make my way into this field, and I was learning and meeting all these people that are doing all this amazing work on, burrowing owls and cactus wrens and whatever species. And then I just realized that all you ever hear on the news, anything that comes up that you ever see on the mainstream news about the environment, it's always terrible, and it always makes you feel really, really bad about yourself. It's always like the world is dying and it's your fault and there's nothing you can do about it. So good luck with the rest of your day. And so we decided that we wanted to try to tell the stories of all the people that are dedicating their lives to doing this work. And it's not necessarily that the stories themselves are positive, it's the fact that they're out there doing that is the positivity. And we named our program Pelecanus because that is the genius of the California brown pelican. It's a local species to me that was headed on the fast track towards extinction, and was able to be delisted in the mid 2000s, I think. because of intentional change. They outlawed DDT in the U.S. and they passed laws and changed the way we do things, and they recovered, and now they're everywhere. I see them every day. And so we kind of wanted to use that as our figurehead. It's like, oh, this is a really cool example of something that we can actually change the way, change the direction that things are headed. And I really like the idea of using the California condor as the figurehead, but Jim No Gyps wasn't as flashy of a name. We'll stick with Pelicanus. And our tagline, the thing we always say is, we can find optimism through science, because the thing we hate the most is this, like, a term I've learned recently called toxic positivity, because we're not in any way trying to say that, hey, don't worry about it, everything's fine. We're just trying to say, hey, yes, things are bad. There's a reason why these people are doing these things, but there's actually thousands and thousands of people that are dedicating their lives to fixing these things. So as we said, Taylor and I are her brothers. This is him looking like like he's trying to look like he knows what he's doing on a boat. And this is our board of directors. And as you can see, Mackenzie Barrow from San Diego Wildlife Alliance is also on there. I think she's also on this call. Hi, Mackenzie. And we have a great team of conservation professionals, and we have a coffee roaster and a pharmacist. They happen to be my friends, but they're actually really good at what they do, and they've been really vital parts of our team. So, and we're really excited. Oh, and our other brother. Sorry to call him the other brother, but he's also on the board. He's actually pretty legit. He's a climate scientist. He's getting his PhD at Caltech, so he's obviously the smart one out of the three of us. So where we'll start is our original podcast that we started in 2015. We call it Conservation Conversations. No matter what anyone tells me, it's a great name. It's not like a tongue tie. You can't get tongue tied at all. And basically, this is the whole list, but we're going to focus on a few of them. But it's been really fun because we've been able to do everything from hold condors while they're treating it for lead poisoning. And we talked to the people at Pinnacles National Park, where they're doing really, really cool things, trying to save and then also expand their population, so then they can be free-flying, be a free-flying species that isn't heavily managed, to fire ecology in Crater Lake National Park. We talked to a few ecologists there. They're doing this really, really crazy thing with this endangered pine species that's slowly disappearing because of climate change and some kind of this blister rust coming through. And they have a really interesting symbiotic relationship with the Clark's nutcracker. So they're using that relationship to help restore it. And it's just a super ingenious way to save a species. So I really like that one. And then all the way to red-legged frogs in Los Angeles. We were able to talk to her, and these species, they basically recovered the species locally, and everything was doing great. And they had, multiple populations. Like, all right, where else do we want to put these frogs? And then the 2018 Woolsey fire happened, and it took a huge setback. And it's a pretty sad story, but again, the positivity is that they're not giving up. They're still there. The host population is still kicking, literally. And all the way to this weird looking thing. We talked to Dr. Devier in the Pantanal of Brazil, where he studies giant armadillos and giant anteaters. And he's doing everything from human dimensions to the actual ecology, because people are really scared of these things. And if you see what it looks like, if that showed up in your kitchen, you'd probably think it was the devil as well. And those species are just so cool, and they're like the size of like I think he said it was like a Labrador retriever, so like size of a large dog, had these huge talons like a velociraptor, and there's ecosystem engineers. So cool. And then we also had the privilege of talking with Dr. Tom Lovejoy, and he told us and shared all these positive stories of 40 years working in this field. He and a couple other people were the first to coin the term biodiversity. He's lobbied the Senate. He's taken senators and Tom Cruise and a couple other actors down to this place in the Amazon called Camp 41. So it's been really exciting. We have a whole long list of episodes. We won't go into every single one, but I will focus on a few just to kind of share those stories. So first one is an episode I did when I was on my Earth expedition in the summer of 2018. Time is meaningless now, so I don't know what year it was, but I think it was 2018. And it was I'm like lacking the words and how cool this trip was and how awesome this place was. It's like a tiny little eco lodge just off the Madre de Dios River, which is a tributary of the Amazon in far eastern Peru. And it's just a really cool place. They utilize the local community. The only way to get there is by boat. It's just a really beautiful area. And we got to go to this Oxbow Lake where we saw this cool turtle. We saw fishing bats. We saw giant otters, giant river otters, that's what they're called. And then our main instructor was Dr. Ursula Valdez I think she's mostly out of University of Washington, but she's a Peruvian native who went to the US to study at university. And she now goes back multiple times a year and works with different organizations, but she works with the little eco lodge there. And it was really cool to learn about the culture from her, but then also like have her, kind of translate and let us talk to the community people that were there. And that was what the episode was about, really, is about her and the community people. And we did a really cool thing where we got to have her translate and we got to hear from the community. And they do everything from mist netting to wildlife cameras, a bunch of ecological studies. And that's kind of what we learned there was, the mist netting practice. And so you get to see a little hummingbird that she caught there, and I think some kind of wood creeper on the bottom right. But I think his name is Aldo. He's a local dude who's like, I think he studied to be a guide. And I've met some really intense birders, and he's as good as anyone I've ever met. And especially when you think about the diversity that's there. And again, it's the fact that these people are dedicating their lives to just setting up an eco lodge, and they have a small farm, but they have a protected area that's right on the edge of a larger protected area where they're doing ecological studies and bringing in students from the US, from local universities, that they actually care about biodiversity, and they're actually working on saving it, even if it is a small area. It's just so inspiring and uplifting to see, especially with someone with like Ursula, who has so much experience on an academic level, and it's really cool for her to apply it on a local community level. So this episode actually was, Taylor was in New Zealand a few years back when he was just kind of traveling and volunteering in between jobs and school. And he was able to visit New Zealand, and this episode was really cool because we talked to a couple of people with the Department of Conservation, which is, if you think about that, the fact that New Zealand has a Department of Conservation is like, can you imagine them trying to establish a Department of Conservation in the US? Be awesome. But yeah, so we talked to a few people, but the one that we're going to highlight is this really cool person named Dr. Andrew Digby, where his main program, he's got a couple programs, but his main one is focused on the kakapo. And they have this really intense program to save the kakapo. I read the book Last Chance to See by Douglas Adams, the same guy who did The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He has a really, really good book about endangered species, and each chapter is about a different one. And one of them is the kakapo. And I think there is a TV show about it with Stephen Fry as well. These birds, they love hair, so they're in his hair, jumping around. So it's kind of cool to watch. But they're a really intensely. Well, I think if I remember right, they thought they were extinct, and then they found like a remote island again that didn't have any rats because they're ground-dwelling birds, ground nesting birds. And he just told this whole long story about how they're like, they're kind of like, he didn't use the word pathetic, but they're kind of like they're like not very good parents. They have to do like lots of management to make these birds survive, because they breed every 2 years, and they have to like go in and like steal the eggs, and then they incubate them, and then right before they hatch or right after they hatch, they go and they plop them back in the nest, and the parents are like, oh great, look, my egg survived. And they even like added some technology which we're really interested in to I think there's a little thing inside the fake egg, so they have to switch out, they take the egg out of the nest and they have to switch in a fake egg, but they have to put like something in it that makes it move a little bit. So because if it doesn't move, then the parents just gonna go, oh well, and they abandon the nest. So they've gone through all these different iterations, and they've slowly increased the population. At the time, I think they had doubled it from when they had started. So it's just such a cool thing. And again, the fact that it's a government project for the Department of Conservation, that just kind of blew our minds, and it was pretty exciting. And then this one, again, I find, for someone who hosts a podcast words, I lose my words a lot. I find it really difficult to explain how awesome this person is. She has created all these different programs to conserve gorillas in Uganda. She's from Uganda, and she's done it all through public health programs and alternative livelihood programs. And so her name is Dr. Gladys Kalema Zikusoka. Their website is gorillaconservationcoffee.org. Check it out. Their coffee kind of goes sold out every once in a while. So when it's up, sold out, or when it's not sold out, get their coffee. My friend's had it. He said it's really good. And it's amazing what she's done. She's like, as true, like she needs to be, we really think that she needs to be up there with Jane Goodall. What she's done for these gorillas, they implemented these public health programs where they tried to, they taught the local community on how important gorillas are, and how they shouldn't shoot them and all those kinds of things. But also, they give women education, they give women jobs to where they don't have so many kids. And it's actually been really helpful for the gorillas because there's less people that are encroaching on the forest. They have established or taught farmers how to grow coffee where they can interact with gorillas. And again, they don't shoot them. And they've taught them that they're actually herbivores. They're not going to come kill you in your sleep. And they've tripled the population of the mountain gorilla in Uganda in the last, I think, 12 years. And it's just insane how awesome she is and their programs are. And she's won every award possible, and she deserves it. So yeah, if you haven't heard about her, watch this episode and do whatever you can to help them out, because it's really, really cool what they do. And their next steps are they're going to take this model that they've built in southern Uganda, and they're going to stretch it out. They want to take it to Rwanda, all these other areas that have mountain gorillas. And yeah, it's just super, super inspiring, and it makes you, these kinds of stories make you feel optimistic. So we also have another podcast called Pelecanus News. And this one Taylor hosts. So I'm going to let him kind of explain it, and we'll kind of give some examples of why we do it.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. So Austin told me that I have a face for radio. So we, with his conservation conversations, what we did to adapt to COVID was we started doing all of our interviews via Zoom. So we got these great interviews, and that's how we were able to talk to Dr. Gladys in Uganda and folks all over the world. But my Pelecanus News is very, very different. This has been a practice that I've had pretty much the last like 7 or 8, maybe 9 years in my career. Is every week I collect conservation news. It just helps me be a better professional. It helps me have my eye on really what's happening in conservation. And you don't hear just the stuff that, like Austin was talking about, all the doom and gloom that's thrown your way. You actually pay attention to the actual conservation news. Well, as conservation conversations was going forward, Austin and I had a discussion about how to expand the organization. And one of the ideas was, hey, why don't you find the most nifty, neato, spectacular headlines, and why don't you talk about them? And so we did that. And so every 2 weeks, what I do is I go through my headlines that I collect, and I find the most amazing ones. And it's completely subjective to me what I think is special. But I try to find the ones that involve rewilding. I try to find ones that involve drawdown projects. I try to find ones that are just showing what that conservation can actually work. And going through this practice for a year and a half now, it has been incredible. So these are just a couple of the headlines. Sorry about the background. If you missed it, I'm in the rainforest of Belize right now, and every once in a while a truck is going by with a bunch of trees that were logged out of the rainforest here. So if that's what you hear, so there you go. We balance the optimism with the reality here. So these are headlines from the last episode. Most of them are from the last episode, I think. And this is what is so astounding to me, and actually one of the things that has surprised both Austin and I, is that when you actually look for these headlines, when you actually pay attention to the news, you'll see some incredible stuff. And just in this last episode, I learned that flying giant cranes are returning to Ireland after 300 years. The Dutch court orders Shell to cut its emissions by 45% by 2030. The Iberian lynx population rises to over 1,000. And I actually think it's like 1,111, weirdly enough. And then the UN declares a decade of ecosystem restoration to make peace with nature. And they actually produce some really great products with that announcement too. And again, this is just a little snapshot, but it's a reminder to me and the project is a reminder to the project that each one of these headlines is just the surface of years, if not decades, of work by conservationists that have dedicated their entire lives and their professional and their personal existences to trying to change these kinds of things. So that's what the project is. That the exercise is just to put an alternative voice out there to say, hey, conservation actually does work.
Yeah, not a lot of people would accuse Taylor or I as being an optimistic people. We can be as cynical and pessimistic as anyone, but we've really found that doing this project over the last 6 years has really helped us change our mindset. And now I'm to the point where like I don't see any other way of being optimistic about it, or at least having an idea that things can get better, because I just don't see any other way of moving forward. And so we always kind of refer to this quote where it's from Michael Soule, the well-known ecologist in Southern California. He said, where I'm asked whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic about the future, I say that I'm possibilistic. And so we kind of took that and we've kind of run with it, because we don't really know what it means, you know, and we really want to explore what possibilistic means, what possibilism means, because optimism kind of gets a bad name. We talk about it in one of our episodes, that you get people pushing back when you're trying to say, hey, let's talk about optimism, earth optimism, ocean optimism. And you people saying like, it's not good that you're doing this, because we need to show the reality to people of how bad things are. And so our kind of response to that is like, all right, well, maybe optimism isn't the best word. Maybe we'll try possibilism. And so we actually partnered with the Smithsonian Earth Optimism group to start a third podcast that is kind of exploring this idea of possibilism, called The Possibilists. Again, another easy word to say. And so in our first episode, we talked to Dr. Nancy Knowlton, who actually established, or she created ocean optimism with another person, I can't remember her name, when she was at Scripps. And they did it was like basically started as a hashtag campaign. It's like, hey, let's start talking about all the cool things that are happening in ocean conservation, because she's a coral reef biologist and she did her PhD on coral reef ecology in Jamaica. And she's awesome. She has as cool of a story. She's been doing coral reef studies for decades now, I think since the early 70s. This is part of her project when she was on the ocean census. I think that's what it was called. And this is her deep diving, which this picture just gives me like sweaty palms every time I see it. I can't imagine being in something that small, thousands of feet below the surface. But she was as doom and gloom as you can get. She and her doctor, Jeremy, she and her husband, Dr. Jeremy Johnson, who has a really cool TED talk on something with oceanography. I can't remember the title. They were known as Doctors Doom and Dr. Gloom. And because they only, they would hold these summer courses for incoming students about, and basically it was just like a short course of how terrible everything is going for the ocean. And then they would come out of this like 3-week course just being like, what am I doing? This is terrible. And so they finally, like over a few years, realized, okay, we should actually like try to inspire. And then that click inspired so much. So she was the one that started Ocean Optimism. And when she got hired at Smithsonian, it sounded like it happened organically, but then she essentially started Earth Optimism as well. So now there's a whole subset of the Smithsonian that we're doing a podcast with, and this first episode was really cool. She's as cool as someone can get, someone who's in her 70s that talks about like diving, and she's still doing all this stuff. So our next episode that's coming out, I sure hope it's coming out in the next few days, within the next week or two, the very least, is Dr. John Paul Rodriguez. He is the chair of the IUCN Species Survival Commission, which is, he talks about it, this crazy coalition of scientists all over the world. I think there's 400 and something scientists, or there's 10,500 scientists part of the commission, but there's 400 leaders, and then out of 165 countries or something like that. And he has to kind of like, herd all the cats to kind of, and the whole purpose, again, the whole optimistic thing is that they exist. There's a huge organization that's their sole purpose is to save species. And he has a pretty cool story. He's from Caracas, Venezuela, and growing up there. And he talks to us about a local bird, the yellow-shouldered parrot, and how all the conservation work they're doing there. So he's got some really, really good on the ground, like frontline conservation work in Venezuela. But he's also at the top of the food chain when it comes to conservation. And he called himself pathologically optimistic, and he tells a story about how he. When he was playing, soccer when he was a kid, and they were down 8-1, I think it was, and they were down 8-0, and then they scored 1 goal, and he just went to his coach, like, all right, we got 7 more goals to go, and they're just like, get out of here, what are you talking about? And so it's very nice that people like him exist in the conservation world, because he talks about ideas that you hear in other fields, like don't be afraid to fail. And you like for yourself, that's like, so it's a good thing to, affirmation for yourself as you go through life. But when you're thinking about conservation, it's like, I'm super afraid to fail. I work on some butterfly species that only exist within, a mile of where I see them. And if we fail, that's it, and so that's really, really scary. But he talks about all that kind of stuff. And again, super inspiring. So that's our Possibilism podcast. We're going to be working with them through the summer, and we're going to have 6 episodes, and we're pretty excited about the list of people that we're going to talk to. Some pretty big names, and that's what's so cool about it, is we can talk to my friends that are biologists like a couple miles away, and then highlight their work, but then also talk to Dr. Rodriguez, and top of the food chain kind of person. So for us, what's next? And as Taylor mentioned, he's in Belize. So I will let him talk about the programs that he's working with there, and we just show some pretty cool photos that we took last week.
Yeah, thanks. For the sake of time, I'll just kind of go through this pretty quickly. I'm here in Belize. Like I said, we're working on some community development projects, some agroforestry stuff, but we're trying to take advantage of it and tell the stories of all the incredible people that I get to work with here. So I'm here at a conservation research station. The acronym is TREES, TREES, and I actually always forget the acronym. It's Toucan Ridge Ecology and Education Society. I might have one of the E's wrong there, but but I'm working with these folks here, and Austin came down last week, and we did some really great research. We worked with the folks here studying bats. This is Diana here, pulling a hummingbird out of a mist net. We went to visit the Bird Rescue Center, talked to some folks there. We talked to some folks with Panthera to talk about their jaguar work. This is the Bird Rescue Center with the endangered parrots. And Belize is a very special place. As Kevin and I were talking before we started, you know, Project Dragonfly has this program down there, and you know, he's taught here several times in the past, and so he knows how special it is here. And so we're just trying to tell these amazing stories of the conservationists that are working against incredible odds in such a biodiverse and such a special place that has a lot of challenges at the same time. So we're trying to tell as many good stories as we can and really do justice and bring some honor to the work that's going on here. We don't know totally what it's going to look like. It might be more conservation conversation episodes. It might be a whole series to itself, but we're just trying to collect it now, and then hopefully, like any of these, the stories will emerge organically.
And one of the ideas we had while down there was, you know, we're basically practitioners that got into telling stories. So we realized that we could actually participate in some conservation if we set it up right. So we're again, this is future down the road, but you know, we'll keep telling the stories, we'll keep spreading optimism, but we actually want to get into the actual conservation of some of these species. And so our last program I want to share is something new that we haven't really established it yet. We're doing it this summer. So this person, Carrie Wilson, is a friend of mine from college. It's his mom, and she basically took care of us, me and I don't even know how many dozen other people over the last 40 years. And she was just so generous with her time. She let me stay at their house for free while I was in grad school, or very cheap at least. In this amazing part of San Diego. She was just generous with her time, with her money, with everything. And she's just this amazing, amazing person. And sadly, in January, she passed. But when we incorporated, that was one of the first things. Is like, all right, well, we're a nonprofit now, so I want to set up something in her name. And then, you know, strangely, 6 months later, she passed. But we were already on the road to setting this up. So we're excited to say that we're starting this program that is going to have a scholarship in her name. We're still working it out with the family on how, you know, who it's going to be solicited to, but we're definitely going to include Project Dragonfly students. It's going to be it's a small amount this is the first year, but we're hoping over time it could be bigger and we can share it with more and more people. But we're also going to have 2 internships. One for kind of helping us get our name out there more and get more people to hear these stories. Because, you know, we're ironic because we're both kind of introverts, but we're in the eyeballs and ear holes business. And we're generally not really good at selling ourselves. And so we need some help coming in and people telling us, you know, selling us for us. But we also need some technical help. And yeah, so these internships will be flowing this summer. We'll probably try to do, you know, 2, maybe 3 a year, you know, a couple months at a time. So yeah, we're really excited to be able to create this program and share this program. And you know, I'll definitely, once we finalize everything about the scholarship, we'll share it with the Project Dragonfly people so they can promote it on their social media, and we'll figure out how you can apply and everything. But that's kind of it. You know, it's a difficult thing to talk about because again, we're so very excited about all these conservation programs, and I just get super geeked out when it comes to ecology. But I personally think that this optimism movement, this whole thing that's happening over the last 10, 15 years, it's the only way forward. And you know, when we're talking to these big names about possibilism, it just kind of, every time we talk to somebody, it just kind of unlocks something that it's like, okay, yeah, we can do this. And if we all just kind of have the same, like, you know what, things are bad, but let's keep working on it. We can save species, we can reverse climate change, all this kind of stuff. It's all out there. We can do it. And thank you very, very much for listening. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, just go ahead.
Thank you both so much. And that's so exciting about the scholarship. Oh my goodness. That's the best way to end a talk for sure about that sort of collaboration. And we'll be happy to share that as an avenue and we can talk more about it. That's wonderful. And yeah, so this is really a time for those listening. Drop a question, drop a thought in the chat, or just go off mute and we can talk a little bit. Maybe if you want to stop this, well, yeah, I guess so people can get your email. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, yeah, it looks like there's a question there. How do you reach out to experts to interview them? Yeah, it does seem like you guys have gotten some big names, so you're doing something right.
I don't know if Austin froze or not.
Yeah, it's been, oh, sorry. I think I did freeze. Go ahead.
Okay. No, you're coming in good now. So feel free, Austin.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, just got this. As soon as I started talking, I got your internet is unstable message again. Yeah, it's funny because at first we just kind of talked to our friends and anyone who would say yes. But it's been really interesting. Sometimes it just depends on the person. Sometimes we just cold email them, cold call them, and say, hey, we have this project. We try to keep the email short because as you can imagine, we could just write like 10 pages about all the stuff we want to do and what our goals are. But that's one of the benefits of having the partnership with the Smithsonian is they not only have the name behind it, so they could reach out and say, hey, we're from the Smithsonian, will you talk to us about our podcast? They'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'd love to have this, have my name associated with the Smithsonian. But also they just know these people. They're not like, oh, maybe we could reach out to this person. It's like, oh yeah, I saw him last Tuesday, he was here for a meeting or something, so let's talk to him. It's like, okay. Yeah, there's some of the names, and they connected us with Dr. Tom Lovejoy, and that episode is essentially how we got the idea to do a podcast with them, because yeah, he's big picture. And it was, your question is, how do we get them to talk to us? I don't know, but it's pretty awesome.
Well, I'll just kind of add on to that too. And I think Austin came up with this idea for this podcast in general because he was trying to, it was a trick. He was just trying to find a way to hang out and talk to all these amazing people. And then the experience has been when he or I reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you want to talk about your work? Everyone goes, oh man, my story isn't it's so depressing. It's so terrible. I don't want to talk about it. And we start talking to them a little bit, and they go, oh my goodness, that was so much fun. And I'm actually more optimistic, and I feel good about this. And because they learn that what we're trying to do is show that they are the story, that the fact that they exist is the exciting and the optimistic part. So they end up coming out of it as seeing it in a different way, I think. So it's been really special in that way. So
yeah, they usually start off the conversation like looking at their watch, like, how much time do you need? Like, really? All right, cool. And then like an hour and a half later, like, oh, let me tell you about this one story. Hey, do you want to go in the other office and meet this person? Like, oh, let's go meet the interns. You know, it's pretty cool.
So Courtney, you had a question. You want to just ask it?
Yeah, sure. I'm on my walk, so if you hear like screaming children, that's why. Yeah, I was wondering, what are your favorite interview questions to ask?
I'd say, so the one question in our conservation conversations episodes, the one question we ask every time is a variation of the question of what gives you hope? What makes you get up in the morning? What makes you keep doing this? You've been doing this for 25 years. How are you still doing this? Because you've seen all this go downhill, or or whatever it is. How do you keep doing this? And it's such a hard question to answer that I like asking it because they just go, I don't know. But when they actually stop and think about it, I think that's the question that they one that once they start talking about how cool their project is, and and how innovative and how collaborative it is, they start to feel a bit more positive. But then once we ask that question, when they actually take a step back and they reflect on it, it's a really, really cool to get their perspective.
Yeah, and I'll say that even though we've only had 2 interviews now for the Possibilists, the question that Austin always ends on is we talk through what the idea of possibilism is, and then we ask them, what does it mean to you? And it's kind of one of those, again, it's that reflexive question, and it makes them step back, and I've been really excited to see what those responses have been. So that has also been special. In the last interview we did with Dr. Rodriguez, I just couldn't help myself. He started talking about the intricacies and the technical, challenges of doing what he does, and I just geeked out. Like my inner 12-year-old that was excited about the work just like popped out, and I kept, I just wanted to go down those rabbit holes, and I was asking questions that were just ridiculous. So it does take its own circuitous path at the same time.
Yeah, it's always tricky because you really want to like be really excited and then like, this is so cool, but you have to make it to where people want to listen to it.
See, Fabiana, you have a question? You want to come and ask it?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had a chance to interview Indigenous people and local communities, how it went, and if not, do you have any plans for that? And yeah, and I'm more than happy to suggest a few people if you would like to.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. We always love it when people give us names to reach out to. Yes and no. When in Peru, we talked to the local people there, and it was really, really nice having Ursula, because I know some Spanish, but not enough to really translate everything they say, especially these pretty technical ecological terms. It would be too difficult. So it was really, really cool to have the the ping pong effect of having the local person talk in Spanish, and then Ursula jump in and say, here's what they're doing. So that's like I said, when we started, we really would just interview anyone who would say yes. And over the last few years, we've really, really tried to expand our horizons and increase our representation, I guess is the best way to put it. And one of our more recent conservation conversations episodes, we talked to Chris Sarabia, who is the board president of the California Native Plant Society. And we had a really good conversation about representation, and he's very much involved with Indigenous rights in California and all that. So it's definitely a direction we want to go. And yeah, we'd love to have suggestions. And the more we can do that, I think the happier we'll be.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in on that one, Austin. As much as Austin was saying, we always love recommendations. We actually get a fair amount of those. So we're really excited because people are like, oh, you should talk to this person. You should talk to this person. So I'm going to put it back on you, Fabiana. We would really appreciate the connections. So if you want to email us and say, hey, this is somebody I know, we are more than happy to reach out to folks with that. We are trying to show as many stories as possible from as many. And actually, Dr. Rodriguez spoke to this in our last interview. You know, he didn't compare biodiversity to biodiversity of perspectives, but he made some connections there that we all benefit when we have this biodiversity, this diversity of perspectives. It helps push conservation further in ways that we wouldn't otherwise. So we will definitely take all of the connections that you can give for us, Fabiana.
Yeah. So a concept that's come up a few times recently with people that it's been really exciting to kind of explore, because it's, you know, you think conservation, you just think species or, you know, research or whatever, but when you get into the meat of it, it's all about, it comes down to people.
Lisa, you want to jump in, or? I always feel weird reading people's comments.
Was that for me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. Sure. So on the structural side and the back end side, I'm just kind of curious how you put together your business model and funding approach, and what things you might have tried and failed forward on, you know, how that story came together.
Yeah, it's a good question, and we're definitely in the middle of it right now. We're very new, and we have a lot of ideas. We haven't really implemented a whole lot of things. Taylor, you can jump in at any moment. But yeah, we have our nonprofit status, so we're gonna be. We got it like right before the end of the year last year, so it kind of didn't really solicit for donations, but we'll be doing that this year. And we have a partnership with the Smithsonian, so it's getting our name out there, and eventually we'll be able to like advertise. We have one advertiser on our podcast, or one of our podcasts now. So eventually we'll be able to, like, you know, get more, and the more partnerships we do, you know, potentially we could, you know, get some money from that and grant writing. So those are all our ideas, and it's just all just too much to do at the same time right now. But yeah, those are the direction we're headed.
I'll just say that we take cash credit. If you want to give us your credit card, Lisa, feel free.
Just put it up on the screen.
But yeah, exactly. Just share it with everyone. Oh, sorry. One of those trucks. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, Austin pretty much covered everything, except that we are in the process of developing our revenue generation in addition to our social media generation as well. Social media outreach generation. So that was part of the reason why we started the nonprofit. That was a very conscious choice on Austin's behalf. And as a business owner, I actually told him it's a terrible idea. We had this conversation about 2 years ago, and he's like, I want to grow, and I don't know how, and I don't know where to take it. And he's like, I think I want to turn it into a nonprofit. And I said, I love you, little brother, but that's a dumb idea, and you shouldn't do it. And it's just too much work. And he said, yeah, I'm going to go forward with it. And he did. And it was one of the smartest decisions, because he was thinking in a way that I wasn't. He brought so many other people into his idea, and he has empowered and actualized them to do things that he couldn't, or to do things that, again, it goes to that diversity of ideas. So he has empowered our board members to reach out to conservationists. So the Dr. Gladys episode only happened because one of our board members reached out and put that together. We started getting donations only because another board member started reaching out. And so it has, what Austin, I think, is doing is what the point of a nonprofit is to create a movement, is to create an idea that benefits the society. And so that's why he did that, is so that we can grow it in that capacity. So I'm glad.
Luckily, I don't listen. Yeah, I say, luckily I don't listen when people talk to me. Great opinion. I'm gonna do what I want anyway.
That is awesome. And it all started, Austin, with, was it a project with Dragonfly? Did you mention that, or did it sort of stem out of a master plan or anything like that?
I had started it just before, but yeah, definitely a lot of things came into fruition during the program. I was only able to, as you can imagine, having a full-time job, having the program, and also trying to do this, I was only able to put out 2 or 3 podcasts while I was in school. But they were all, one of them was about my internship, essentially, the people I worked with my internship. And then the other one was the Peru episode. So yeah, it definitely was heavily influential on this project. And I don't think it also helped me get into the program because I just started it, which I needed, unfortunately.
Very cool. Well, if anyone else has any more questions, now is the time, because we'll start to wrap up. I do just want to promote, it's funny you guys talked about Belize so much. Our next speaker will be on July 15th. It's going to be Jesse Young, who is the founder of the Community Baboon Sanctuary Women's Conservation Group. And for those of you that don't know, the Community Baboon Sanctuary is kind of hailed as the beginnings of the community-based conservation movement in the world. It is one of the early examples, and she is the founder of the women's group that has largely maintained that organization over the last couple decades. So she's going to be a wonderful speaker. So July 15th, we'll send out more details, but mark it down. And yeah, and just thank you, both of you, for joining from these locations. And I see, okay, Mackenzie, is that for the—
That's a link to the pelicanus.org to donate.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, just in case anyone was looking for it.
Yeah.
She's a good board member.
That's right. This is your job, Mackenzie. Yeah, I got to get some Gorilla Conservation coffee, and I got to check out this PayPal as well. And I definitely hope you guys will come back down the line, and we can keep the conversation going. So
yeah, well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Definitely.
Thank you
everyone for attending and joining us, and we'll sign off, but have a good night.
Thank you.
Zoom clap.
Good night, everyone.